You know, David, with all of these weeks of social distancing, it's sometimes really hard to remember that we are a part of a much larger community. Our next guest, however, she doesn't forget about that. She is the CEO of one company that helps build our very communities, starting with the people who live next door. Joining us from her home office in Marin is Sarah Friar, CEO of Nextdoor.com. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a crazy, busy time. And I know you have not had a great pause. You have been busier than ever, namely with a project called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, a partnership with Walmart. Let's start there. Tell me, what is this? How does it work?
Sure. So, one of the first things we saw on our platform as the crisis hit was neighbors saying, how can I help? And it was a beautiful thing. In fact, we saw the willingness to give help almost double from March into April. In fact, the number of times help is mentioned is up 262%. Walmart came to us and said, one of the things we're finding in a pandemic is an essential worker, beyond being the doctor or the nurse, is also the grocery clerk. And getting your groceries is an essential service. They wanted to make sure that neighbors were there for each other. And so what I've seen in my neighborhood is elderly people reaching out and saying, hey, I'd love someone to go pick up a prescription for me, or I'd love someone to go to Walmart and pick up some disinfectant for me. And Walmart just wanted to make that easier. So we did a campaign with them, both in a product we called our Help Map. So hopefully all of you out there have already put your hand up to offer help, and you show up in the local Nextdoor Help Map. And they also created those Walmart groups where you can say, hey, I'm going to Walmart. What can I pick up for you? And one of the first people that said something was a vet who staying at home. He's incredibly immunocompromised, actually. And he said, please, I need some Clorox wipes. Can someone do that for me? And within minutes, 3 people had actually offered to do it. And so I just have loved seeing neighborhoods come together.
I noticed that same thing. I'm a big user of Nextdoor, and one of the first things I noticed within the first week or so of shelter in place was the best of humanity all around me, kind of bubbling up and surfacing to the top, which we often see in a crisis, but we don't often see it outside of our own windows on such a local level. Tell me a little bit more about a story that stood out to you. Have you been a part of Neighbors Helping Neighbors yourself?
Yeah, so actually my favorite story locally, we have a group, a help group here in Marin called the Good Fairy Group. And it sprung up almost immediately, exactly as you said. And now we have this incredible person who matches you to someone to help. So I actually have someone I help. I've gone to Costco and got a prescription for her. I've gone to CVS and got a prescription for her. And actually, as I walked out through, I brought some Hershey's Kisses because I was like, everybody needs a little chocolate in their life too. But on that very group, I've seen things like a single mom. Her son had an 11-year-old birthday. She felt really sad. She was like, I've been working so hard. I haven't been able to do anything for him. And the Good Fairy Group managed to organize 5 or 6 people just to give them a call and wish them, sing happy birthday down the phone line. And in fact, they even organized pizza. And so we see the whole gamut, right? It's the elderly, it's the vulnerable, it's the young kids who might need someone to do a little kind of virtual babysitting. It's the whole thing. And of course, mask making and mask distribution has been massive just here in my neighborhood. And this is just me in Marin, but we see it across the Bay Area. It's incredibly uplifting.
One of the things that I saw recently via Nextdoor was a 5th grader having a birthday, sheltering in place with some immunocompromised people in the house. About 100 people drove by, honked their horns, held signs. It makes me cry just thinking about it. And I love that. And some people will complain about Nextdoor. They'll say it's a bunch of busybodies. That's not my experience. I know people tend to complain about it that way, but it seems like you guys as a tech company have really been very careful to moderate and make sure that things stay really positive. How do you do that?
Yeah, so we've really tried to just generally, even without a crisis, make sure we're kind of rising to the moment. So our purpose at Nextdoor is to cultivate a kinder world where everyone has a neighborhood to rely on. So you're right that first and foremost, we do try to help moderate content. So when we see conversations get heated, particularly if a post is coming, we actually put in place something called Kindness Reminder. And Kindness Reminder was based on working with a lot of academics to slow people down, effectively to take them out of their biases and bring them back into this part of their mind, into their cognitive brain. So a little interstitial pops up as you post and says, remember, great neighborhoods are created with kindness. And since we launched that, we've seen almost a third of posts get edited. So it's a great sign that people take the feedback. And we see Kindness Reminder being fired less often. So it's actually starting to norm people around what's a better way to respond to your neighbors. I mean, beyond that, Nextdoor is a very open, transparent platform, right? So you're a real person at a real address, you've been verified, you post with your name and often your picture, and we think a lot of that goes a long way to make sure you're not in a zone where there's bots or where there's people who can say things with kind of no ramifications. So generally, we think that helps with a much better tone. And then finally, just during COVID-19, we took that same technology and turned it into a prompt to remind people to just check what was the source of their information. We find neighbors want to give their neighbors great tips and tricks, but we also want to make sure it's coming from kind of a basis of science, particularly when you're talking about something like a coronavirus. And so that's another place where we've used that same technology during the crisis to quickly make sure people have the most accurate, but also the most real-time information. And by the way, a lot of our public agencies are right there with us. So Governor Newsom, Mayor Breed in San Francisco, I get on there every day to see what the Marin Health and Human Services group is telling me is the next thing that I need to be aware of in the county.
Well, how do you think then that this pandemic, these times we're living through and rising to, especially with leadership and technology, how do you think this will change the future of technology?
So it's something I ask my team all the time. Let's think about the new normal that's coming. What are the emergent themes? Because I think in the beginning, people were more in the mindset of like, how do we get us back to what it used to be like? Like, how do we get back to normal? And I think to not take advantage of a crisis would be a shame, right? Think about really big crises in our world, like World War II created a whole new world order. Things like the civil rights movement, right, created a whole new way to think about our race relations. So I think with COVID-19, some of the themes I'm seeing right now, first is definitely this rise of local. People have really come to understand the power of proximity, the power of their community. And in fact, if many of us begin to work from home more frequently, maybe for long periods of time, our community is actually also our day-to-day, everyday environment. Second theme I'm interested in is the conscious consumer. So ironically, by not commuting to work and not flying all over the world, which is something I was doing a lot of because Nextdoor is in 11 countries.
Same, yeah.
We're not polluting the environment. And so we're seeing kind of a rise of people talking about reusing, repurposing, bartering, which has been fun to see. Also, I think is frankly in the very sad territory of where people are losing their jobs or are furloughed, right? They're going to have to make their dollars stretch further. So doing things like trading in the neighborhood is very top of mind. And then the third theme, the final theme that I'm thinking a lot about is also this idea of holistic wellness. So clearly the virus has made us think a lot about physical well-being and do we want to have temperature checks and mask wearing, but it's also, we shouldn't forget, having a big impact on our mental health. There are a lot of people who are sheltering in place alone. We know loneliness is on the rise, and we need to make sure we're there for those people, right? If anything, technology is wonderful, but technology takes away human connection, and human connection is incredibly important just for our overall health and well-being.
Sarah, we are so grateful that you have taken time out of your really busy life managing, leading through such an incredible time, such a tough time in our world. Last question, what will change for you personally? What's the biggest lesson you've learned and how will you move forward in your role as CEO and just as your role as a neighbor?
Yeah, well, thank you. So I think as a leader, I've tried to lead in this crisis with two words always top of mind: transparency and empathy. And I don't know if it changes, but I want to do more of that, right? Transparency to always over communicate both to my employee set, but also all my stakeholders, and in particular our neighbors. So we've done a lot more things like note to neighbors coming from me to just tell you all what's happening and what we're thinking. So we're not just a kind of a big organization. we're real people who just want to create kinder neighborhoods. And on the empathy front, making sure that my team is constantly thinking about what it's like for the customers on our platform. We've talked a lot about residents and neighbors, but we shouldn't forget another huge population on the platform, which is small businesses. And small businesses are really hurting. And so I want to make sure we're getting out and thinking about how to solve their issues. One of the things we're doing right now is making sure if they need to post into Nextdoor, delivery, right? All of those things, we want to get that message and connect that small business. So that's probably the biggest change. Personally, it's just remembering this power of human to human connection. I had one of those birthdays for my very jaded teenager, 13-year-old. He didn't know all his friends were going to show up in their cars. And it was the crack moment where I actually saw him. I saw the tears, which of course 13-year-old boys never cry. But it had me welling up, and I realized just how much we're all missing that actual just personalness. And so it's learning to put my phone down, put away technology, and invest in the people around me more.
Oh, Sarah, what a great way to end this interview. Thank you so much. I'm giving you a virtual hug. Thank you so much for doing this interview, for being who you are, and for helping lead us through this incredible time in our lives. Thank you, Sarah Friar, CEO of Nextdoor. You can do your part. Go on nextdoor.com, check out Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and just figure out how you can help, because one thing we've all learned is helping other people